The thunder of hooves echoed across the dusty plain as Emma Vaughn clutched her tattered shawl tighter around her shoulders, the stagecoach rattling mercilessly beneath her. Montana Territory, 1876, was no place for a woman alone, but she had nowhere else to go after the scandal that had chased her from Boston's polite society all the way to this untamed wilderness. The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside a weathered building with a faded sign declaring it the Silver Dollar Saloon and Hotel. Sweetwater, the tiny settlement she'd selected from a dog-eared map, hardly deserved to be called a town. Emma gazed through the grimy window at the single muddy street lined with wooden buildings, her heart sinking. This remote place was her last hope where nobody would know her name or the shame that followed it. "End of the line, madam," the driver called, already unloading her single trunk. Emma stepped down carefully, her city boots immediately sinking into the mud. The spring melt had turned the main street into a quagmire, and she wobbled unsteadily as she tried to maintain her dignity. A strong hand caught her elbow before she toppled face first into the dirt. "Careful there," came a deep voice. "These roads can be treacherous after the thaw." She looked up into eyes the color of a summer sky. The man steadying her wore a worn leather vest over a simple shirt, dusty denim pants, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded most of his face. A leather holster hung at his hip, the pistol grip worn smooth from use. "Thank you," Emma said, withdrawing her arm once she found her footing. "I'm afraid I'm not accustomed to such rustic conditions." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Clearly." He nodded toward her trunk. "You planning to stay?" "Yes, I've arranged for a room at the hotel." Emma straightened her shoulders. "I intend to open a dress shop. There seems to be a lack of proper attire in these parts." The man looked her over, from her fashionable but impractical traveling outfit to her mud-spattered boots. "I'm Marshal Daniels, town sheriff." He tipped his hat. "Welcome to Sweetwater, miss." "Mrs. Emma Vaughn," she corrected, the lie practiced but still bitter on her tongue. A widow's status would provide some protection in this frontier town, though she'd never actually been married. "And thank you, Sheriff Daniels." Emma watched as he lifted her trunk with ease. The sheriff was lean but strong, sun-bronzed and weathered like the land itself. Despite her determination to rely on no one, especially no man, she was grateful for his assistance. "I can manage from here," she insisted as they reached the hotel's porch. Marshall set the trunk down but made no move to leave. "Mrs. Vaughn, I should warn you that Sweetwater isn't Boston or New York. Life here is rough. A woman alone, I'm quite capable of taking care of myself." Emma cut him off. "I appreciate your concern, but I've endured worse than a little mud and primitive accommodations." Something in her tone must have convinced him, for he simply nodded. "My office is across the street if you need anything." "Good day, Mrs. Vaughn." Emma watched him stride away, shoulders squared beneath his vest, before turning to face her new beginning. The room was sparse but clean: a narrow bed with an iron frame, a washstand with a cracked mirror, a small table with a single chair, and a chest of drawers. Emma unpacked her few belongings, setting out her sewing supplies with particular care. She had learned dressmaking from her mother and had expanded her skills working in a Boston atelier. It was the one thing she had to offer this place. That night, sleep eluded her. The sounds of the frontier town were alien drunken laughter from the saloon below, the occasional gunshot in the distance, the howl of coyotes under a moon so bright it cast shadows through her thin curtains. Emma stared at the ceiling, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The following morning, Emma set out to find a suitable location for her shop. The town was small enough that she could walk its entire length in 15 minutes. Most businesses clustered around the main street: the saloon, a general store, a barber who apparently also pulled teeth, a small bank, and the sheriff's office. A few buildings stood empty, casualties of the boom and bust cycle common to frontier towns. She paused before a vacant storefront with large windows. Though dusty and neglected, it had potential. A bell jangled as she pushed open the door. "Can I help you?" A stooped man with spectacles emerged from a back room. "I'm interested in this property," Emma said. "Is it available for rent?" The man looked surprised. "It is, but, pardon me for saying, madam, you don't look like the usual sort interested in a place on this street." "I'm opening a dress shop," she explained. "I'm Mrs. Vaughn. I arrived yesterday." "Herbert Phillips," he offered, shaking her hand. "I own the bank down the street. This building's been empty since the assayer's office closed 6 months ago when the silver mine petered out." They negotiated terms, and Emma was pleased to discover that her limited funds would stretch further here than in the East. She signed a 6-month lease and took possession of the keys that afternoon. As she swept years of dust from the floors and scrubbed the windows, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Here, she could reinvent herself. Here, no one knew about Thomas Caldwell and his false promises, the child she'd lost, or the scandal that had destroyed her family's reputation. "Need some help?" Emma startled, nearly dropping her broom. Sheriff Daniels stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "Thank you, no. I'm managing quite well," she replied, pushing a damp tendril of hair from her forehead. Marshall stepped inside anyway. "Phillips mentioned you'd taken the place. Ambitious project for one person." "I'm stronger than I look," Emma said. "Never doubted it." He glanced around. "But that display counter's too heavy for one person to move." Emma had been avoiding that particular challenge. The massive wooden counter ran the length of one wall. "I plan to work around it." Without another word, Marshall removed his gun belt, set it aside, and rolled up his sleeves. "Where do you want it?" For a moment, Emma considered refusing his help out of pride, but practicality won. "Along that wall, if you please." Together they transformed the space over the next few hours. Marshall moved the heavier furniture while Emma directed and arranged her supplies. By late afternoon, the shop was taking shape. "I appreciate your assistance," Emma said as they stood back to survey their work. "Though I'm surprised the town sheriff has time for such tasks." Marshall shrugged. "Sweetwater's been quiet lately. Besides, we look after our own here." He studied her face. "You're planning to stay then? Most newcomers don't last through their first winter." "I have nowhere else to go," Emma admitted, then immediately regretted her candor. A look of understanding crossed his features. "We all come west for a reason, Mrs. Vaughn. Some running to something, others running from something. No one here will pry." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Emma turned away, busying herself with a box of ribbons. "I should finish unpacking. The shop opens tomorrow." Marshall nodded, retrieving his hat and gun belt. "Good luck, Mrs. Vaughn." The dress shop opened with little fanfare, but curiosity brought several of the town's women through Emma's door that first day. Most came to look rather than buy, but Emma didn't mind. She offered tea and displayed samples of her work, taking measurements and discussing the latest fashions from back east. By the end of the week, she had orders for 3 dresses and numerous alterations. It wasn't wealth, but it was a start. Emma settled into a routine. She rose early, opened the shop, and worked until dusk. She took her meals at the hotel restaurant, where she gradually became acquainted with other townspeople. She kept to herself otherwise, declining invitations to social gatherings. Sheriff Daniels became a regular visitor to her shop, always finding some excuse: a button needing repair, information about a town meeting, or simply passing by on his rounds. Emma found herself looking forward to these brief encounters, though she tried not to acknowledge the warmth that spread through her when he appeared in her doorway. One evening, as Emma was closing up, she heard a commotion outside. A wagon had arrived, and several rough-looking men were unloading crates in front of the saloon. "New girls," explained Widow Harper, who ran the hotel. She had stopped to chat with Emma. "Mr. Thornton brings them in every few months for the saloon. Poor creatures." Emma watched as young women climbed down from the wagon, their dresses garish and their faces painted. One girl, barely more than 18, looked around with such lost desperation that Emma's heart clenched. "Does no one help them?" she asked. Widow Harper sighed. "What help is there? Most come willingly enough, even knowing what awaits them. Some are running from worse situations." Emma couldn't tear her gaze from the young woman who now stood apart from the others, clutching a small bag. "What's worse than selling yourself? Starvation, abuse, abandonment." Widow Harper shook her head. "Judge not, my dear. We all do what we must to survive." The words haunted Emma that night. Had she not almost made the same choice when Thomas abandoned her? If not for her sewing skills, where might she have ended up? The following afternoon, Emma was surprised when the young woman from the wagon entered her shop. Up close, she looked even younger, with haunted eyes and a bruise forming on one cheek. "Can I help you?" Emma asked gently, the girl startled as if unused to kindness. I saw your dresses in the window. They're beautiful. Thank you. I'm Emma Vaughn." "Lily," the girl offered, touching a bolt of blue cotton reverently. "I used to sew before." Something in her voice made Emma's chest tighten. "Would you like some tea, Lily? I was about to have a cup." They sat in the back room, and gradually Lily's story emerged. Orphaned at 16, seduced and abandoned at 17, she'd been working in saloons for nearly a year. Thornton had promised better conditions in Sweetwater, but she'd already discovered those promises were hollow. "I don't want this life," Lily whispered, "but I don't know how to escape it." Emma made a decision. "I could use an assistant. The work is growing and I can't manage it all myself. Room and board at the hotel plus a small wage. It's not much, but you'd hire me, knowing what I am." Lily's eyes widened. "I know what circumstances can force upon a woman," Emma said quietly, "and I know that everyone deserves a second chance." That evening, Emma approached Thornton at the saloon, Marshall at her side. The saloon owner was initially furious at the suggestion of releasing Lily from her contract. "She belongs to me," Thornton growled. "Cost me good money to bring her here." "No person belongs to another," Emma replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I'll compensate you for your expenses." Marshall watched silently as Emma counted out nearly all her savings. Thornton snatched the money, muttering about interfering do-gooders, but the deal was done. "That was your business capital," Marshall said as they left the saloon. Emma lifted her chin. "There are more important things than business." A slow smile spread across his face. "Mrs. Vaughn, you continue to surprise me." With Lily's help, the shop flourished. The girl had a natural talent for embroidery and quickly learned to cut patterns. Women who might have avoided a former saloon girl were won over by her gentle manner and skill with a needle. Emma and Lily took rooms next to each other at the hotel, forming a small family of sorts. For the first time since the scandal, Emma felt she belonged somewhere. Summer faded into autumn, bringing cattle drives and cowboys to Sweetwater. The shop was busy with orders, and Emma found herself working late into the evening. "You're burning that lamp oil mighty late," Marshall observed one night, finding her still at work. He'd taken to escorting her back to the hotel after dark. "These orders won't complete themselves," Emma replied, setting aside the wedding dress she was finishing for the blacksmith's daughter. "You need to rest sometimes." He leaned against the counter, watching her work. There's a social dance Saturday at the schoolhouse. You should come. Emma's hand stilled. I don't dance, Sheriff. Marshall, he corrected. After 4 months, I think we can use first names. She smiled despite herself. Very well, Marshall, but I still don't dance. Everyone dances, he countered. Even stubborn dressmakers from Boston. Not this one. Emma resumed her stitching. Besides, who would escort Lily? I won't leave her alone. Marshall grinned. I believe young Deputy Collins would be more than happy to accompany her. He's been finding excuses to walk past your shop 3 times a day. Emma had noticed the deputy's interest in Lily, and the girl's blush whenever he appeared. I'll consider it. Saturday arrived clear and cool. Emma found herself standing before her mirror, smoothing the skirts of a dress she'd made years ago but never worn. The deep burgundy silk complemented her auburn hair, which she'd arranged in a simple but elegant style. Lily burst into the room, resplendent in the blue dress Emma had helped her make. You look beautiful. I knew that color would suit you. Emma smiled at her friend's excitement. And you'll be breaking hearts tonight. The schoolhouse had been transformed with lanterns and autumn flowers. A trio of musicians played lively tunes as couples whirled across the floor. Emma stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Lily dance with Deputy Collins, her face glowing with happiness. You came. Marshall appeared beside her, handsome in a clean shirt and vest, his hair slicked back. I came to watch, Emma clarified. Not good enough. He held out his hand. One dance, Mrs. Vaughn, then I'll leave you be. Perhaps it was the music or the joy on Lily's face or simply months of Marshall's patient friendship, but Emma placed her hand in his. One dance, Sheriff, and it's Emma. His hand at her waist was strong but gentle as he guided her into the dance. Emma followed his lead, surprised to find she remembered the steps from her girlhood lessons. See, you do dance, Marshall murmured, his blue eyes warm. Under duress, Emma replied, but she was smiling. As they moved across the floor, Emma felt something tight inside her begin to loosen. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to enjoy a simple pleasure without shame or fear. One dance became 2, then 3. They paused for refreshments, and Marshall introduced her to ranchers and their wives from the surrounding countryside. To her surprise, Emma found herself enjoying the evening, laughing at stories and even sharing a few of her own. The night air was crisp when Marshall walked her back to the hotel. Stars spread across the vast Montana sky in numbers Emma had never seen in Boston. Thank you, she said as they reached her door. I enjoyed myself more than I expected. Marshall studied her face in the lamplight. You don't allow yourself much enjoyment, do you, Emma? The directness of the question caught her off guard. I have my work. Work isn't living. He touched her cheek lightly. Whatever drove you to Sweetwater, whatever you're running from, it doesn't define you here. Emma stepped back, the familiar wall of protection rising. You don't know what I've done. I know who you are now, Marshall said simply. That's what matters to me. Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Emma with a confusion of feelings she'd thought long buried. Winter descended on Sweetwater with a vengeance. Snow piled high on the boardwalks, and the wind howled through cracks in the buildings. Business slowed as travel became difficult, but Emma and Lily kept busy with mending and creating warm garments for the townspeople. The cold brought illness, and influenza swept through the town. Emma and Lily joined other women in nursing the sick. When Lily fell ill, Emma refused to leave her side, applying cold compresses and spooning broth between the girl's cracked lips. You'll make yourself sick too, Marshall warned, bringing firewood to keep their rooms warm. She has no one else, Emma replied, exhaustion evident in her voice. She has you, Marshall said softly. And you have me. The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Emma had been avoiding Marshall since the dance, uncertain of her own feelings and afraid of his. Now, with Lily's life hanging in the balance, such fears seemed trivial. "I can't lose her," Emma whispered. "You won't." Marshall squeezed her shoulder. "Rest, Emma, I'll watch her for a few hours." Against her better judgment, Emma allowed herself to be guided to her own room where she collapsed into sleep. When she woke, the light had changed. She'd slept far longer than intended. Panicked, Emma rushed to Lily's room only to find the girl sitting up, pale but alert, with Marshall reading to her from a dog-eared novel. "Her fever broke around dawn," he explained, relief evident in his face. Tears sprang to Emma's eyes. "Thank God." As Lily recovered, the bond between Emma and Marshall deepened. He began taking supper with them regularly, and Emma found herself looking forward to their conversations. He told her of growing up on a small ranch, losing his parents young and finding his way as a lawman. In turn, she shared stories of Boston, her love of design, and her dream of creating beautiful things. She never spoke of Thomas or the scandal, though sometimes she caught Marshall watching her with questions in his eyes. Spring arrived, melting the snow and bringing new life to the valley. The anniversary of Emma's arrival in Sweetwater passed, and she realized with surprise that she had created a real home here. One evening, Marshall invited Emma for a ride outside town. The hillsides were carpeted with wildflowers, and the air was sweet with the scent of new growth. They stopped on a ridge overlooking the valley, dismounting to stretch their legs. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, turning the humble buildings of Sweetwater into something almost magical. "I bought land here," Marshall said, pointing to a stretch of ground near a creek. 20 acres. Good water, enough grass for some horses, close enough to town for my work." "It's beautiful," Emma replied, understanding why he'd want to claim such a place. "I'm building a house," he continued. "Nothing fancy but solid. 2 bedrooms to start, maybe more later." Emma's heart quickened. "Your plans seem well thought out." Marshall turned to face her. "Emma, I've known you for a year now. I've seen your kindness, your strength, your determination. I've come to care for you deeply." "Marshall," she began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. I know you're carrying something, some burden from your past. I've respected your privacy, but I want you to know that whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me." Tears pricked Emma's eyes. "It would matter if you knew." "Try me," he said gently. The story spilled out, then her whirlwind romance with Thomas Caldwell, son of a prominent Boston family, the promises he made, her discovery that she was with child, his cruel abandonment when his family threatened disinheritance, the miscarriage that followed, the whispers and condemnation that drove her west. "I was never married," Emma concluded, unable to meet his eyes. "I've been living a lie since I arrived. I'm not a widow. I'm a fallen woman." Silence stretched between them. Emma waited for the judgment, the disgust, the withdrawal she'd come to expect. Instead, Marshall took her hands in his. "Look at me, Emma." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. "You were young and trusting. You loved unwisely but truly. That man's betrayal is his shame, not yours." "The world doesn't see it that way," Emma whispered. "I'm not the world." Marshall's voice was firm. "I'm just a man who loves you for exactly who you are." Emma's breath caught. "Love?" "Yes, love." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I've loved you since you arrived covered in mud but too proud to accept help. I've loved you watching you build a business from nothing. I've loved you when you gave away your savings to help Lily. And I love you now, knowing your full story." Fresh tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "I've been shamed enough," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can bear more." Marshall wiped away her tears with gentle fingers. "Then I'll cover you with my name," he said softly. "If you'll have me." The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a question. "Are you certain?" Emma asked. "I have nothing to offer, no dowry, no respected family name." "You have yourself," Marshall replied. "That's all I want." In that moment, Emma realized she had been healing slowly over the past year, not just surviving but beginning to live again. And Marshall had been there, patient and steady, never pushing but never retreating. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly. "Yes, I will marry you." His kiss was gentle at first, then deepening as Emma responded, her arms circling his neck. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "We should get back," Marshall said reluctantly. "People will talk." Emma laughed, a free sound she hardly recognized. "Let them talk. I've survived worse." They were married in the little church on a perfect June day. Lily stood as Emma's witness, radiant in a gown they had created together. Deputy Collins stood with Marshall, his own intentions toward Lily growing increasingly obvious. The whole town turned out for the celebration. Even Mrs. Thornton, the saloon owner's wife, had commissioned a special dress for the occasion from Emma's shop. As they danced at their wedding celebration, Emma marveled at the journey that had brought her to this place and this man. "Happy, Mrs. Daniels," Marshall murmured against her ear. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied truthfully. They moved into the house by the creek, which Marshall had finished just in time for the wedding. Emma set up a smaller workshop there, taking only special commissions now that Lily was managing the town shop with growing confidence. On cool evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Sometimes they spoke of the future children they hoped for, dreams they shared. Other times they simply enjoyed the peaceful silence and each other's company. One year to the day after their wedding, Emma placed Marshall's hand on her still flat stomach. "We're going to need that third bedroom sooner than we thought." Joy lit his face as he gathered her close. "Are you sure?" "The doctor confirmed it yesterday," Emma said, her own happiness bubbling over. "By Christmas, we'll be 3. Marshall knelt before her, pressing a kiss to her middle. "Hello there, little one. You are already so loved." That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Emma reflected on the twisting path that had led her west. The pain and shame that had once defined her existence now seemed like another lifetime, important to her story but no longer its central theme. "What are you thinking about?" Marshall asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "How strange life is," Emma replied. "If Thomas hadn't betrayed me, I would never have come west. I would never have found Sweetwater or Lily or you." "Sometimes our greatest blessings come from our deepest wounds," Marshall said thoughtfully. Emma nestled closer to him, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. "I wouldn't change any of it, not if it meant losing you." "You'll never lose me," he promised, his arms tightening around her. Outside, the Montana night spread its starry canopy over the valley. Inside, Emma Daniels slept peacefully in the arms of the man who had taught her that love could heal even the deepest shame, and that sometimes the most beautiful lives are built from the pieces of broken dreams.